fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify in these majors. You got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness. And I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome, everybody, into an all-new episode of Bare Knuckle Fighting Main Event here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. And my appreciation to Brian Sosha stepping in last week while I was out on vacation to fill in and do double duty, doing, of course, his Bare Knuckle show and this show as well. I'm sure it was a great episode as always. Just great host there, Brian Sosha, great part of the BKFC, so always great to get him involved whenever we can on the show. But we had a big card that we have to talk about. We got plenty to talk about throughout the show. We're going to break down this card with some of the fighters involved. We talked to three of the people who got victories this past weekend at BKFC 61 out in Mohegan Sun. We're going to bring on next up. It's going to be Jimmy Altera Rivera, of course, the featherweight. Fought there at the catchweight 150 against Daniel Strauss. Gets the unanimous decision victory. We will talk to him about that fight. Later on, we will meet up with strawweight Natalie Gage, who made her BKFC debut and got her first victory over Sarah Click off the doctor stoppage. Great performance by her before the doctor steps in and ends it. But, obviously it was a well-deserved victory for her in her debut. Her Combat Sports debut as well, not just BKFC. She's done, she made a bunch of amateur appearances in boxing MMA, but her first pro Combat Sports fight goes her way in the BKFC. And then, of course, later on, we're going to meet up with our buddy Zach Calamus, Shark Attack, as the heavyweight joins us after his big win over McKenna. A great third-round KO for him. 3 wins in a row. We'll see now that he's in the top 5 of the heavyweights, if he's got anybody on the hit list, who's going to be next for him trying to move up the rankings and maybe get a shot at that title one day. We will talk to the Shark Attack, Zach Calamus, later on. And then we'll wrap things up, breaking down the great card we have coming up this weekend. That's right, there's no rest. Right back at it. Right back on the road. The BKFC is down in Omaha for a great fight card there that we will break down the top couple fights before we get out of here later on. But first, let's recap what we just saw up there at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. BKFC 61, of course. It ended up being headlined by Jimmy Altera Rivera and Daniel Strauss. We were supposed to have that women's title fight with Heather Hardy and, of course, the Misfit putting on her belt up there for grabs at 125. Of course, that unfortunately got canceled. We got a lot more detail about that in the last couple of weeks with Heather Hardy talking about the injury she suffered after her last glove boxing match that, messed up her vision. She had headaches, then she thought she can come back after a couple months and that, she can get things going. But unfortunately, during training, had the same issues pop up. And seems like that is going to be it for the fighting career of Heather Hardy. And we are sad to hear that. But obviously, her health and taking care of her family long term is more important than getting back in there. And we wish her the best. I'm sure she'll have, a myriad of different roles in fighting still, as that has been her life, whether it be training, managing, commentating, whatever it is. I'm sure Heather Hardy will be involved. Sad we didn't get to see her in the BKFC, but she's had a wonderful career as a glove boxer, MMA fighter, and all different facets of combat sports. So we wish her the best, and hopefully we'll see the Misfit in there soon against someone else. Who knows? A lot of people vying for those titles. I know that, more posts recently from Britain Hart. Maybe she wants to get back in that 125, try to get double champion status. We'll see if she moves up or if someone else moves up the rankings and gets that shot at the Misfit. But it was a great card. Mentioning Britain Hart and the Misfit, both of them were there in force, as well as Redneck Mundell, 3 champions showing off their belts up there in Connecticut. Always a great audience following the BKFC. I'm sure there's plenty there, in the New England area, rooting for a bunch of different fighters, including Zach Kalmus, who we'll talk to later on. But as we said, headlined by Jimmy Rivera versus Daniel Strauss. Strauss coming in off that loss that he had against Datton to win in his BKFC debut. Jimmy Rivera, unfortunately, had the doctor stoppage against Jeremy Stevens when he went up in weight class. Looking to get redemption here. Both of them looking for a win. And that ends up going to Jimmy Altera Rivera by unanimous decision. 50-45 on 2 judges' scorecards, 48-47 on 1 judge. I don't know how you got that. I thought it maybe 49-46 would have been a better scoring straight across the board, as I thought it was 4 rounds to 1 Jimmy. I think the first 4 all went to Altera Rivera. He came in there and just worked the body against Strauss, kept hitting him in there, kept getting those good shots. Strauss had some shots here or there, but never really had the big power punch to put Jimmy back on his heels. Never really protected the body or came forward much and threw a bunch of combinations. It really was just Altera Rivera putting on a clinic to me on body work, and a great performance by him through 5 rounds, gets the unanimous decision victory. He talked about after the fight that, he feels like he's getting ducked in that featherweight division by the champ, Kai Stewart. But he wants him. He says, I want a chance at the title, whether it's he still holds it or whether it's Duran who holds it after they fight. He wants the winner of that fight. We'll see if he gets that, sometime end of the summer, maybe into the fall, as those guys are fighting in June. One below that fight was the lightweight bout between Mike the Lone Wolf Trizano versus Louis El Loco Lopez. Now, Lopez, of course, fought for that title against Kai Stewart. Now coming back here on short notice against Trizano, who's making his debut for the BKFC. Going against a top-level guy in Louis Lopez. That's a tough ask in your BKFC debut on short notice, but he made it happen and he made it work. Louis Lopez came out strong like he always does, being the aggressive fighter he is. Trizano was trying to keep him off with some counters. And then just before we get to the 1 minute spot here in the first round, big right followed by a big left by Trizano, drops Louis Lopez. He does not answer the call. He kind of sits up, never tries to get up after that. That's as far as he gets, kind of holding the eye. He knew it was over, didn't like the way that he got hit there. Something must have been, maybe cracked or broken, because we know how tough Louis Lopez is. But that is the end of the fight for him. And Trizano, the Lone Wolf, the teammate of Jimmy Rivera, getting his debut win for the BKFC, looking very good. You also had Royal Ryan Reber versus the Hitman Foy in a feature fight. That one was a little disappointing. I mean, Foy, as they said on the broadcast, said in the fighter meetings that he knows Royal Ryan Reber starts a little slow. That the first 3 rounds he kind of feels things out, and then 4 and 5 he comes on. Yet Foy never really took advantage in the first 3 rounds or any advantage at all throughout that fight. Very weird scoring in this one, as you get a 49-46, a 50-45, and a 48-47. Again, don't know where 48-47 came from. I thought clearly Reber controlled the whole fight. Even though you had Foy coming forward in the first couple of rounds, he never really threw. And Reber was able to throw enough to, sway the judges, I think, in his favor. And then started to come across and started coming on strong in those late rounds, as he always does. A great performance by him, a dominating performance. Not the most exciting or brutal fight that we saw throughout the night, but still Royal Ryan Reber gets another victory to continue his ways in the BKFC. Natalie Gage, who we're going to talk to later on, made her BKFC debut in the strawweight fight against Sarah Mocha Madness Click. Click, the veteran, had a bunch of fights in the BKFC, came on strong in that fight, came out aggressive right away, while Gage, who has much more of a boxing MMA background, used that boxing style. She has a lot of amateur fights. I talked about that on the broadcast. Clearly, relying on that with her defense, a lot of head movement, a lot of circling, trying to find her shot. and that worked out well. And then just about probably halfway through that round, catches Click with a good shot to the eye. She thinks that she was eye poked. It seems like it was more likely a knuckle, but she held the eye. That was obviously an issue for her. Had trouble seeing out of that left eye throughout the rest of that round. Even talked about it in her corner there in between rounds that she had problems. And, Gage took advantage. She started circling instead of the left, now circling to the right, even though that was the power hand of Click to attack that eye, to go where she couldn't see and start hitting her. Doing a good job there. Then in the second round, it looked like Gage was gassed, mouth wide open, just coming forward, but not really throwing nearly as much, not nearly as aggressive. And she started getting picked apart by Gage throughout that second round. And then as they come to the scratch line for the third round, ref sends Click over to the doctor to go check out the cut in her eye that was on the inside. Doctor stops the fight, said it's not done bleeding, it's going to get worse. That's the end of the fight. As you saw the reaction from Click, she was not happy about that at all, as most fighters aren't when they get stopped by the doctor, but probably for the best because she did not have much in that second round. I don't know how a third, fourth, or fifth would have gone for her. You also had a great debut performance by Rick Genghis Hahn against Steven Stengel. Hahn, of course, the former judo Olympian, making his BKFC debut, gets the knockout win in 35 seconds. Stengel, the much bigger fighter, came forward aggressively. Instead of Hahn trying to close the gap, it seemed like Stengel was trying to chase him down, and it cost him because he gets a big counter left hook and then a right uppercut pretty early in that fight. On the second time that he tries to get his hands on Hahn, gets dropped, does not get up for the 10 count. Hahn gets the victory. And then, of course, another great win by Zach Kalmus over Conor McGregor. We'll talk to him about that in that heavyweight debut, the heavyweight bout, third round KO. We'll talk about all that coming up next up, though. Jimmy Altero Rivera here on SportsGrid.
You look at the Denver Nuggets and say, whoa, just a week ago, they were that minus 115 or so price. Now we're looking at them at a 7-1 price. Any chances the Nuggets can actually come back?
I think this is going 6 or 7 games, so I think that could be a little bit of a tighter spread between those two. But when you got those two guys, those two monsters, and Towns and Edwards, it's just really hard.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. And it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid, and we're recapping this great card we just had up at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, making their trip in there, the first tri-state area card, getting closer, maybe New York, New Jersey, some of these big states here. Connecticut, of course, doing a great job bringing in the BKFC, and a guy who did a great job leading that card was Jimmy Altero Rivera. He joins us now as we bring him back on the show. I know you guys talked last week with Brian Sosha, and now we get to get our recap here with him about this fight he had against Daniel Strauss. Jim, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. Great fight with Daniel. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, I want to talk about that entrance. We've talked before about how, you pull double duty, not just as a fight, well, actually triple duty. You're a fighter. You have, in school, obviously, where you train others, and then, a police officer in Elmwood Park, New Jersey as well. And I love the entrance there where you brought your brothers in blue out there to support you as you walked in for that fight. How did that idea come about? And, how did things go with that, getting all the guys there to support you?
I mean, man, it was great. I mean, Rob from BKFC thought of it, and he was like, hey, would some of the guys come up there? I'm like, actually, some of the guys are coming to watch the fight. I'm sure it's not a problem to get them in uniform, and we do this. And it was awesome. It was a great experience. And the fact that, as being police officers, we are the brotherhood, to be able to have them up there as I walked out was awesome.
It was great. It was nice to see. And, you had other brothers there as well, obviously, from your fight team there at Tiger Schulman's. I saw, obviously, training with you, getting ready for that fight. Great performances by, all you guys there on that card. What was that like for you? How's that been a change? Obviously, you've trained for a long time with a lot of these guys and trained for different fights, different organizations. But, now to have them in the BKFC as well, and that, different discipline in combat sports, knowing what you're going through, the different things and tips that you can give them as they prepare for, taking off the gloves and just going straight fist to dome. What is that like, this training camp, going through that with these guys?
I mean, it's awesome. They get to see kind of what I go through with the training camp. It's a little different when you're just focused on straight boxing, and compared to when you're doing an MMA fight, you got to work about kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and all that. Unfortunately, Lewis, they couldn't find a replacement opponent for him, but Trezano, as a co-main event, Mike Trezano put in Louis Lopez down in the first round within 90 seconds. It was a great way to start the night off, that's for sure, for Team Tiger Showman.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a great performance by him against a guy who was, fighting for a title not that long ago. To be able to drop him that quickly like that, show, to get that kind of guy as a late replacement for your first fight, and then, also beat him as easily as he did, must have been a huge bump for him, a huge confidence boost, and a nice welcome to the BKFC for your teammate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thank you, Lou. Obviously, we're both grateful, myself and Trezano, that Louis took the fight on like 5-6 days notice. I know it was a hard time finding someone that would make 155. I guess it's just one of those things where, me and my team have been battling of staying at 145. I know I had to give some weight over to Daniel Strauss, which, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And going up a weight class was Jeremy Stevens. So I'm looking forward to the next one being at 45 instead of a catch weight, or at 155, giving up a lot of weight for myself because I'm not that big of a guy.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because I'm not sure if you talked about it with Socha before the fight, but obviously for me, seeing that it was 150 was a little, weird. What was it? Was it just that he couldn't make the 145? Was it, that the BKFC wanted it at the higher weight class? What was it that made it at the catch weight instead of you guys going down?
Yeah, I know. I guess Strauss just reached out and said, I guess it's going to be a hard cut for him at 146, which, it's not an easy cut, but it is what it is. For not easy cut for anybody. So he reached out. They wanted 155 plus a pound. I said, listen, I'll do 150 plus a pound. 155 plus a pound. 156. That's nowhere near my weight class. I took the fight with Jeremy Stevens because, one, it's Jeremy Stevens, and then two, it was on a big card on the Mike Perry Eddie Alvarez card. So it was well worth taking that fight and going out there. Even though it was a doctor stoppage because of the cut, I still went out there and put on a show and beat up Jeremy Stevens for the 3 rounds that I had.
Yeah, that was a tough loss for you. Obviously, that's one thing you always have to worry about now with the BKFC. You always have to obviously worry about cuts and different things in combat sports that could take you out without, you actually being dragged out in your shield, so to speak. But, it seems like more and more with the BKFC, you have to worry about the cuts with the bare knuckles and the things that could stop with the doctors. What was that like for you to go through? I mean, because I thought you had a great performance, and then to have, unfortunately, the doctor stepping in there and, keeping you from continuing and getting that win. How frustrating was that? And what did you have to do? You have to change how your style in order to avoid getting cut like that? Or is it just, it is what it is and it's going to happen at some point and you just got to deal with it?
I think just over the years of getting punched in the face, it's just easier to get cut. I mean, we are doing knuckle, bone to bone. So I think it's just easier, obviously, to get cut. With that, the Jeremy Stevens fight, I was up 2-1 going into the fourth, and the cut was really bad. So this past fight with Strauss, when I got cut in the second round, I was like, I didn't know how bad it was. I just knew it was bleeding. So I just kind of let the gas go. And I was like, I'll try to finish him if I can in the second round. I don't know what the doctors are going to do. I got back to the corner. The cut man, he worked on the eye. He did an awesome job on the cut and was able to take care of it so I could continue the fight. So thank you, G. I appreciate that. And then I just went in there and just kept to our game plan and kept throwing stuff and, honestly throwing and trying not to get hit at the end after exchange, just so I wouldn't make the eye worse in the fight.
Absolutely. We're going to break down the fight. We're going to take a quick break in a minute and break down the fight afterwards. I don't want to get into that now before we come back. But, I mean, now that, you fought at 155, you fought at, the 150. You've talked about featherweight. You said you wanted the next title holder, whether it's Kai Stewart, if you get him to stop ducking you, as you said, or whether it's Duran. So 145 is the goal. You want to get back down there, stay down there, and not have to, be bouncing around like this? Or is it still the option of, if it's big enough fight, maybe you'll put on the extra weight and, fight those guys?
My goal is at the end of the year being the champ at 145. I literally was able to make 145 this fight coming around. I only have maybe 6 pounds to cut the day of weigh-ins, so I didn't have that much. So I'm looking back. I'm looking forward to this Duran and Kai Stewart fight and fight the winner for the belt.
Well, hopefully we can make that happen. We'll talk to Jimmy Rivera when we come back about this fight against Daniel Strauss. A great performance to headline the Mohegan Sun card for the BKFC last weekend here on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. And it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort
night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We're back here on Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid with Jimmy Rivera, El Terra, of course, getting the unanimous decision win over Daniel Strauss to headline the Mohegan Sun card this past weekend. We're going to break down that fight right now. Jimmy, you talked about the body work. Was that what you planned on starting with from the beginning? Because it seemed like that was a big focus throughout the fight. Was that just what he was, out there and offering you? Or was that, the game plan from the start to start hitting the body, see if you get the hands go in order to open up the head?
Listen, we know coming into the fight, he wanted the extra weight. So we figured in our head, all right, he probably didn't train as much for this fight. His body's going to be soft. Let's take advantage of that. So I went in there, ripping the body, and coming up a little short, unfortunately, when I was finishing up at the head. But the game plan the whole time going to take that body away from him. Had to come in, a little heavier, 5 pounds heavier. Body was definitely going to be a little soft, and we were going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, it was interesting. In the second round, you had that huge combination of like 8 or 9 punches in a row to the body. Were you surprised that didn't at least drop him to a knee and make him recover there? Or, I was surprised by some of the shots he landed in that exchange that he just let you, keep going and somehow it didn't put him down.
You know what? Daniel Strauss has always been a competitor. He was the 2-time champ in Bellator. He was an unbelievable fighter. Still is. The guy is tough as nails. When you're getting into fights like this, me versus, Strauss, Stevens, Howard Davis, these guys, these top guys, no one's going to just take a knee like that and just go out. It's got to be something that they don't see to finish him. And he was tough. I remember I got talking a little bit after the back, and I said, I know you f***ed in my eye a little bit, but how's your body feel? And he just laughed. He was cool. At the end of the day, we're competitors. We show each other respect. He definitely was like, you did f*** up my body. I go, you did f*** up my eye. I think we're even, but it was a good time, and I told him I appreciate the fight and us getting in there and putting on a show for the fans.
Yeah, were you surprised? I mean, it seemed like you were doing all the body work. You never really dropped the hands. I mean, Chris Lytle on the broadcast, he's like, eventually he's going to have to drop those hands and that head's going to open. But it seemed like he was just content to let you keep wailing on the body, that, he never really protected against that. And then also, it seemed almost like he was tentative. I know that he got some good shots, obviously. You got the cut on the eye, but it never seemed like he really put the foot on the gas until that 5th round when it was pretty much out of reach unless he finished you off.
Yeah, I mean, he knew I was. Listen, I didn't drop him to the knee, hit him in the body, but I slowed him down. That's for sure. You can see that. When someone's hitting so hard to your freaking body and you want to throw a shot, you almost kind of are hesitant to throw a shot. And I think that's what happened in the fight. I'm not Daniel Strauss, but I think me ripping his body kind of hesitated him, from being aggressive and being like, all right, I need to throw, but I don't want to throw and get hit in the body again. So he definitely, I know we spoke after the fight, he definitely felt it. He told me, I'm like, yeah, I felt this too. And I think hit him in the body, slowed him down for all the rounds leading up to the last round. Again, Daniel Strauss is a tough opponent. He is no scrub. He's had over 30 MMA fights. He's 0-2 in the BKFC now. But he's not one of those guys that's just going to quit. You know what I mean? And that's what Dave Feldman wants, and that's what we bring him and myself. We go in there, we fight. We're not just going to take a knee. We're not just going to quit or bow out. We're going to go in there, kick each other's asses, and put on a show for the fans and the people watching.
Well, you certainly did. You put on a great fight, a great performance. You've looked great in the last, your last couple of fights. Obviously, the other one did not go your way with Stevens because of the doctor stoppage, but still you looked great through that. It's obviously helped you. Now you're climbing into the top 5 in the rankings here in the featherweight division. You said that's your goal, to fight for that title, to hold that belt by the end of the year. Is that, just you got to sit back and wait for those guys and try to get your shot? Has there been talk with Feldman about you getting that next opportunity after Duran? Or do you think that, even if Kai Stewart wins it, you think that he's, you said he's ducking you. Do you think he's still going to try to avoid you, even though you have the big name that can, maybe bring him a little more accolades than some of these other guys?
Listen, you kind of said it all. Right now, as far as I know, is that there's a possibility we may fly out end of June for that Kai and Duran fight, and possibly get in a title shot from what I'm told. I just kind of wait and see. I let my manager, Abe, from First Round handle it. And Dave, they figure it out, speak to one another. My thing is I just keep training my teammates here at Tiger Showman's, and I keep working and getting better. So this way, when I get that call for that belt, if I'm flying out end of June, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do my work, do what I have to do, and get that belt around my waist.
Well, Jimmy Rivera, great performance at the Mohegan Sun this past weekend. Thanks so much for joining us. Congrats on the win. Looking forward to seeing you back in there, hopefully for a title, and continue your rides in the BKFC.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Thank you to everybody that supported me, my brothers in blue. Be safe out there, all the guys in blue, and thank you to the fans.
call the entire game, whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong, or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called, or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report. And people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, just don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors, but Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on Sports, because we continue to look at this great card we just had up in Connecticut, the Mohegan Sun, this past weekend. A lot of great performances. One of those was a debut performance by Natalie Gage, who joins us now on the show, the strawweight here. Natalie, first off, we're going to talk about the fight. Great fight by you, great performance. But before that, I mean, with the last name like Gage, how do we not have a fighter nickname? Like, it's just right there, usually, like 20 gauge, 12 gauge. It's some kind of, it's just easy. How do we not have a fighter nickname? I know it's your first fight, but come on, we got to get on this.
I don't know yet. We'll see what happens.
Well, it was a great performance, and you know, you came out like a shotgun blast with that first fight. First off, you know, Click had a couple fights experience. This was your first fight, not just in the BKFC, but your first pro fight, you know, at all. You had a bunch of amateur boxing fights that they talked about in the broadcast, a couple amateur MMA fights. What brought you to the BKFC that made you, you know, choose this as your starting point for your professional career?
We talked about it a little bit, and it wasn't something I necessarily took seriously at first, or an opportunity I strongly considered at first, because I was really interested in MMA, and then we talked about it a little bit more, and, you know, it just kind of felt like the right fit. It seemed like a lot of fun, and I was like, well, let's give it a shot. So when the opportunity came up, we took it, and I'm glad we did. It worked out. I loved it.
It was a great fight by you. You know, a lot of people come in there. It's obviously a lot different from glove boxing, a lot different from MMA. You know, sometimes the fighter gets in there and you get a lot of nerves, and all of a sudden, it's, you know, they get that hit a couple times, like, wait, I don't like this, but you seem to thrive with that. You can see, obviously, the boxing influence in your style, the way the head movement you use, the great counters. You know, what was the biggest difference for you, you know, between your past experience in the amateur career to doing the bare knuckle fighting? What was the biggest change you had to make in your training? What was the biggest thing that maybe caught you off guard, or that you know, found different when you actually got in the squared circle this past weekend?
Taking the gloves off, I mean, it definitely is a big difference. I was glad that, I mean, that's one thing. You can prepare yourself as best as you can, but there's nothing quite like getting in there and actually fighting. And I mean, as far as bare knuckle. With training, we focused a lot on conditioning, working a lot with a little bit smaller gloves, just straight, you know, obviously didn't work any MMA for a while and just focused on boxing technique, switching up defense as far as things that worked with bare knuckle that might not necessarily work with MMA and vice versa. So just switching up the training a little bit, defense, offense, keeping up my conditioning, and that was it. I think it worked.
Absolutely worked. A great performance by you against Click. Now, in the beginning of that fight, she came at you hard. She tried to put the pressure on you right away. Was that something you were expecting from watching her past fights? And once you're in there and that's kind of an at you right there, how did you adjust mentally? Was that something you were ready for? Or was it something that you had to kind of change the way you were preparing to go and start this fight, the way she came at you aggressively?
No, that's exactly what my coach said that she would do. He said she was going to come out swinging, so we expected her to do that. I expected her to not underestimate me necessarily, but given that she had experience and I didn't, I kind of expected her to capitalize on that, basically, that she had experience and I didn't. And so mentally preparing for that and just knowing I was going to have to come out and at the very minimum match her energy and be at least just as aggressive and show her that I was in there to fight just as much as she was. So
you certainly were. And, what really seemed to turn that fight, I mean, not that it was going one way or the other at that point, but, it definitely put it a lot more in your favor was once she had the problem with the eye. She seemed to think it was an eye poke, but, watching the replay, it didn't seem like there were any fingers out there. It could have been just been Knuckle. But how, much for you did that turn the tide, do you think, once she had that eye issue? I saw that you went from, kind of circling to the left to get away, circling to the left, to once that eye was messed up, circling to the right into the power hand because you knew that she couldn't see anymore and trying to hit her there. How big do you think that was for, pushing things in your favor once she had that eye issue in the first round?
I mean, it definitely helped that as well as just having a little bit of time in there to adjust and kind of find my footing, find my distance a little bit. That was one thing my corner did tell me after the first round. He said, he said, go to the right, circle to the right. And so once we made that, I definitely saw a difference. I think knowing she was hurt a little bit too, I didn't want to let that chance go. I didn't want to let that opportunity. I didn't want to give her time to recover, if that made sense. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly took advantage of that through the first round. You even heard, in her round, if you're watching the broadcast, she was telling him that there was something wrong with her eye in between those rounds. But it even changed it more in the second round because it wasn't necessarily the eye. That was still an issue for her. But it just seemed like watching it, that she seemed like she was gassed after that first round. That, the big shots that she was throwing early and then the shots that you landed took something out of her by the time, she got off that stool to come in for that second round. Did you feel that? Her mouth wide open, the heavy breathing. Did you know that, she was in trouble cardio-wise at that point? Because you certainly took over and, you had your distance and were just landing pretty much at will throughout that second round.
Yeah, I did notice. I could feel it coming off of her that she looked like she was starting to break down a little bit. And, as time went on, the more I went, the more comfortable I was getting. I felt good. I didn't feel tired. I didn't have the adrenaline dump, which I was kind of expecting, but I'm glad I didn't. So my arms felt good. They felt fast. I felt like I could kept going and going and going, even despite the little cut she caught me with. I knew if it was a problem, the fight would be stopped or the doctor would be called. So I was like, I just got to keep going. Don't think about what I had and focus on what she was showing and work off of that. So.
Well, you certainly did that, and I know that she was upset at the stoppage. We saw her reaction in the video that we played while we were talking before. But I mean, honestly, I don't think it would have gotten much better for her going into a third, fourth, or fifth round. The way that she was having trouble laboring through that second round, it seemed. But either way, you did your job. A great performance by you, and a great debut win. So congratulations to you. I found it interesting. I was looking at your bio on the BKFC site that started as a ballerina dancer. I mean, obviously. It's something that's a lot of toll on your body, a lot of hard work as well, not to put it down, but it seems like a big leap, I'm sure, in most people's minds to go from ballerina to bare knuckle fighter. What kind of transition was that from you to go from a dancer to a fighter?
It was just, I started fighting or boxing when I was 22, almost 23. And I started doing it just for just something different to do. I was I had stopped dancing at that point. But I was just going to the gym and like lifting weights and stuff like that. And I was kind of bored. So I started boxing and then took a fight a few months after that. And it just kind of took off from there. Eventually got into jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and tried my hand at MMA. And then, obviously went back to boxing with bare knuckle. And it kind of happened by accident, I guess. But I love it. I love the competition. I love it has its similarities in a lot of ways in terms of the how the not the training specifically, but how competitive it is and how aggressive the training is and whatnot. So it makes sense to me. It probably doesn't make sense to everybody, but it's really fun. I love it.
Well, you're certainly showing you got the skills to compete at this level, and we appreciate you coming on with us. It was a great fight. We look forward to seeing you back in there again in the squared circle. Great debut performance, and looking forward to seeing you fight again.
Thank you very much.
That is Natalie Gage, who got a great win over Sarah Click up at the Mohegan Sun this past weekend. Just starting to pick her apart and dominate through the end of the first and that second round. We'll see what she can do in her next fight and the next level that she can step up. Hopefully you see more of her soon. Great performance by her. And when we come back, we're going to talk to fan favorite, show favorite, Shark Attack. Zach Callum is going to be in the house here on SportsGrid.
Using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Devastating loss to Georgia Tech, where they made significant coaching errors. But Miami, with all of these changes, obviously looking to churn over this roster and upgrade the talent level.
Don't sleep on Rick Pitino. Listen, at the end of the day, the portal is the portal, Mike. Don't matter where you came from, it's where you're going and how much money can you get.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting, main event here on SportsGrid. It's always fun to talk to our next guest, of course, Shark Attack. Zach Callum is in the house. Great performance by him at the Mohegan Sun this past weekend, BKFC 61. A KO win over Conor McKenna and a just brutal heavyweight brawl there. As always is with Zach, one of the most entertaining fighters in the BKFC. He's going to go out there and put on a show every time, and he did it again. Zach, thanks so much for joining us. Great win over Conor McKenna, man. That was a back-and-forth battle throughout that fight.
Oh, yeah. He was really tough. And, I did not take him lightly. in my training camp. So I'm very grateful that I buckled down and I got to hard work for a couple months. I had a great training camp for that fight.
Well, it showed a great performance by you. One thing that threw me off at first was, obviously you're a very aggressive fighter. You like to get in there and just, mix it up with whoever your opponent is. That's always the way you fought. But the first about 40 seconds of that fight, and especially after the scratch there, you backed up, kind of put yourself against the ropes a bunch in the early part of that fight. Was that kind of a little rope-a-dope you're playing with McKenna, trying to get him to come after you and get him in your wheelhouse? What was going on there? Because that's not the usual style we usually see from you.
Well, Mom, that's a great. My hat's off to the great James Toney. James Toney was a great champion in 3 weight classes, and my sparring partner is Steve Ucosta, and that was James Toney's sparring partner, and when he was knocking everybody out. So I just have knowledge being passed down from a great boxer, champion, 3-time champion, to another WBC champion, straight to me. So I'm getting great advice, and I'm learning at a rapid pace. You know what I mean? I go in the gym, and it's like I'm Tom Brady, and my coaches and my sparring partners are Bill Belichick. You know what I mean?
Well, it was definitely, it worked for your favor. You started coming forward, started getting, right into your wheelhouse. And then after that, you flipped that switch and went to Zach Kalman's Shark Attack style and just started to open up big shots on him. And, was it always the plan to kind of do that and then open up? Or was it just, you're kind of feeling him out first?
Yeah, I don't even have a plan when I go into these fights. I watched no tape on Conor McKenna. I watched no tape on Josh Freeman. All I did was check if they're lefty or righty, and I just kind of went freestyle. Is real. That's why my fights look like that, because I don't build a game plan for the fighter before I fight him. So it's kind of like a barroom brawl. You know what I mean? I'm trying to simulate more like something that people can relate to.
Well, it was fun and exciting as always. Then, once you turned up, you started to really pummel him early in that first, late in that first round. Were you surprised? Obviously you had the knockdowns in the second round, but you're surprised he was able to stay up in that first round with some of the big shots you're landing on him, especially to the body late in that round.
No, there was nothing in that fight that surprised me at all. Oh, not at all. I did my homework, and that's all I can say about that. I knew how tough he was. He was skilled in martial arts, and he could take a punch. I'll tell you that much. You know what I mean? He could give one too. Well deserving of a fight of the night. Me and him. It takes 2. So we're friends now. I mean, he cut me pretty good. I got a bunch of stitches right here. A couple, nothing serious. It'll heal in a couple weeks. But I just say I'll give him the respect that he deserves. It wasn't a one-sided fight, and I'm grateful because I never took him lightly. I just always, when I fight, I figure I'm fighting the baddest man in the world. And that's why I have so much respect for my opponent, because they're getting in there with me. So it's like, if you don't respect your opponent, how do you really even respect yourself? I mean, that's just that's my opinion. And every fighter is entitled to their opinion. That's why we live in America. It's a greatest country, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, he certainly was a tough guy. He came out strong in that second round. In the beginning of that, he was very aggressive coming out there. It kind of bit him a little bit later as you got those knockdowns. You got 2 different knockdowns in that round. Could have been 3. They called the one off because they said the shot to the back of the head that didn't seem to be the one that knocked him down. But still,
I agree. I agree with everything that Mr. Mergliata does. I think he's a wonderful referee.
But you got the 2 knockdowns to make it, dominating 10-7 round. And then he still came back at you in the third. So, as you said, he's a tough guy. Never gave up, came coming forward. And then, of course, the third is where you catch him and you drop him and finish him off. Did you know after that last knockdown that was going to be it, or did you expect him to get back up like he did the other ones?
Sometimes when you punch a guy, kind of like guys who play baseball or, really any sport, there's a sweet spot on the bat. And when you hit that home run, it felt like that. You know what I mean? So I knew he wasn't getting up. That's why I was just like, I knew he wasn't getting up because I connected. You know what I mean? I connected very comfortably. I like to call that punch. It feels like the feel on your hand, so people can understand it. It's juicy. It's like punching a watermelon with no core on it, no green part, just soft. It just feels juicy. Boom, just a direct punch right in the kisser.
Well, it was a perfect punch and it ends the fight and gets you the victory. You're third in a row now in the BKFC. How do you feel now that you 3 wins in a row? You're in the top 5. How do you feel about that? The streak that you're on, and what are you looking for next? I know that you're always wanting to get back in there. Obviously, you have to wait for the stitches and things to heal, but what's on your hit list? Who's out there for the Shark to go attack now?
So there's definitely people I have in mind, you know what I mean? But I'm going to say what I always say when I'm asked that question, and it's a big letdown to everybody who wants to know what's going on. But the truth is, I don't even know. You know what I mean? It's not up to me. Nobody's above the organization. Nobody's above the company. And they have a plan for me. And I think David Feldman was asked the same question on the Bare Knuckle show earlier with Brian Sosha. He was asked what's up for Zach next. And, that's not something that we're going to discuss right now. You know what I mean? There's a plan for me, and there's things I got to do, and I'll be back. For sure. I'm a company man, and it's just a matter of timing and working the business and finding the right opponent. And that's not my decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I heard Dave give that answer to Brian, and we look forward to seeing you back in there again. Shark Attack, Zach Calamus coming at us here.
Thank you, guys.
SportsGrid. Thanks so much. Great performance.
You look at the Denver Nuggets and say, whoa, just a week ago, they were that minus 115 or so price. Now we're looking at them at a 7-1 price. Any chances the Nuggets can actually come back?
I think this is going 6 or 7 games, so I think that could be a little bit of a tighter spread between those two. But when you got those two guys, those two monsters, and Towns and Edwards, it's just really hard.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Every missed call, the entire game, whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report. And people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back as we wrap up another episode of Bare Knuckle Fighting Main Event on SportsGrid. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to talk to some of the fighters that were involved in that awesome card up in Connecticut at the Mohegan Sun. Great to catch up with Jimmy Altera Rivera and see how he felt about that fight against Daniel Strauss. A great performance by him. Like we said, just a clinic and working the body and doing some great boxing on the inside as he did throughout that fight. It was also great to talk to Natalie Gage, get to know her, the strawweight who made her BKFC debut. Very interesting path to being a fighter. We've talked to a lot of different fighters about how they got here, whether they were, a lot of them were athletes and football players or wrestlers or, different things. But to go from ballerina to boxer to MMA fighter to bare knuckle fighter, very interesting transition for her. I mean, still a lot of punishment on your body no matter which one you're going with, but a lot of dedication, a lot of competition, but it definitely one of the more interesting transitions that we've heard of, and a great performance by her against Sarah Click. She showed that boxing skill that she had throughout that fight before the doctor stepped in. And then, of course, catching up with our man, Shark Attack, Zach Calamus, who, great performance by him against Conor McKenna, third-round knockout victory. Bunch of knockouts for him in the second and third round, being the aggressive, tough-nosed fighter that he always is, the exciting guy that he always is for the BKFC. Always the company man there. Fight whoever, whenever. Just happy to be here, happy to be in there, and we'll look to see what is next up for him as he now climbs into the top 5 of that heavyweight division after his 3rd straight victory in the BKFC. So thank you to all of them for coming on. Thank you to all you for watching. Why don't we look forward to what we have coming up this weekend, because there is no rest. Right back at it. We went from Connecticut, now we're going down to Omaha, Nebraska this coming up week for a great card. Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, fight night in Omaha for the BKFC. Going to be headlined by Carlos Trinidad Snake versus Dustin Pegg. This is going to be a great fight with these guys, both of them on some great streaks, looking to make a push there and get themselves into title contention. Of course, Trinidad Snake coming off the win over El Bandito Brito last May, so it's been a long layoff for him, almost a full year. It's going to be almost a full year, by about 2 days since we last saw him fight. Coming in off a 4-fight win streak, beat Elvin Brito, beat Rydell Riley before that, a win over Noah Cutter a couple of years ago. So this guy has been climbing up the ranks, making his bones off some good names here in the BKFC, and now looks to do it against another guy here in Dustin Pegg, who had a great win over Joe Elmore in his last fight last September. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Looked dominant in that fight over Elmore, just picking him apart, using that great boxing. This is going to be a very tough fight, a very aggressive, powerful fighter in Trinidad Snake versus a guy who's going to use the counter and try to pick you apart in Dustin Pegg, of course, who's also going to be fighting in his home area. So does the disciple control the pace and able to get out of the big shots of Trinidad Snake, or is he going to try to come in and overwhelm him like he did against Elvin Brito? This is going to be a big fight for this division. I think whoever wins this could obviously put their name in the mix for a title shot next. We'll see if it becomes that. Of course, their performance in this fight always is going to be a big determining factor in it. Not just where you've been, not just who you've beaten, but how you look in your last fight when Dave Feldman is there watching ringside. We'll see how both these guys perform. It's also going to be a great fight between Dakota Cochran and Jeremy Holloway, 2 guys looking to make some big strides in their records as well. Of course, Holloway coming off the win over Cameron Van Camp. Started with a draw in his BKFC career, now 1-0-1 after the win over Cameron Van Camp in South Carolina back in October. And then, of course, Dakota Cochran, 2 wins in a row after some tough losses against guys like Josh Dyer and Mike Richmond, some of the tops in this organization. Then has some great wins over Eduardo Peralta and Noah Cutter. Last time he fought was almost a year ago as well on that Omaha card, May 19th last year, 2023. So long layoff for Dakota Cochran. Can he keep the momentum going here against a tough Jeremy Holloway, looking to make it 2 in a row on his record? You also have a great fight with local favorite P-Town Wilson coming in there after he had a tough loss against Howard Davis, just got dismantled by Howard Davis in Miami earlier in March. Now coming back 2 months later, can he get back on the winning ways? He kind of alternated wins and losses for a couple times. He's going there against Emeka Ifekandu. Very tough opponent for him, even though he's fighting at home. It's going to be a very good battle between those guys, as a good debut win against Duray for Akandu. We'll see what P-Town Wilson can do in front of his hometown crowd. You also got some great battles there with guys like Stanislav Grosu coming back there. You got Taylor on the card as well, doing a lightweight battle. Some big names, some local favorites. Always great fight fans out there in Omaha. We'll see how this one goes. I mean, I think the top fight, that Pegg Trinidad Snake one. Trinidad Snake has been tough to dominate, to beat, to pick apart. But if anybody's going to do it, the disciple might be the guy. I know he's a slight favorite coming into this fight. It's going to be a tough fight for both these guys. And I look forward to that card this weekend, this Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you're taking that out on the BKFC app or the website, however you view the fights. Make sure you're tuned into that one. We'll recap those fights next week here on SportsGrid and look forward to what we have coming up down the pike. A couple more fights. Big month of May for the BKFC.